Hi.
Hey, hi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Women Everyday Series, Episode 3, Season 4, brought to you by �she_work. Let me ask you something. Every organization sitting in this room today has made a people decision that cost them more than expected. And every organization has also made a people decision that quietly became their biggest competitive advantage. That gap between the wrong call and the right one is exactly where I work. I am 𝐭𝐤 Gupta. For over a decade, I have helped organizations find the talent that moves their business forward and help professionals find opportunities that truly match their potential. I understand what talent costs when you get it wrong and when it delivers when you get it right. What it delivers when you get it right. So, what are we here to talk about today? People, capital, technology. As CFOs, you know that every people decision is a financial decision. The cost of a wrong hire, the ROI of the right one, the price of attrition. As CDOs, you know that data alone doesn't transform a business. The people interpreting it, acting on it, and leading with it, that's where the transformation actually happens. People, capital, technology, these are not three separate conversations, they are one conversation. And the organizations that understand the connection are the ones redefining what growth looks like today. Now, the conversation is happening for a reason. �she_work is a platform built on one simple but powerful belief that connecting the right talent with the right opportunity changes everything. From helping companies hire smarter to building a community where women in business and technology truly belong. �she_work has been on this mission since 2019. And as part of this mission, �she_work created the Women Everyday series, a series designed to bring industry leaders together for conversations that go beyond the surface, conversations that ask questions businesses are actually grappling with. And this season, the question is this: how do people, capital, and technology come together to drive real sustainable growth? That is why we are here today, and I'm really proud to be a moderator for this conversation. Now, talking about people, capital, and technology requires people who have not just studied these forces but navigated them, made hard calls because of them, and delivered results through them. Today, we have exactly those leaders with us. So, without any further delay, let me bring in the voices that will make this conversation truly worth your time. First, Mr. Rajiv Gupta, CFO at L&T Technology Services, a near three-decade finance veteran and board-level leader, alumni of 𝐬𝐨𝐳 and Columbia Business School, who has steered large enterprises through IPOs, capital markets, and high-stakes transformation. Next, Anshul Agarwal, CFO and board member at Akkodis, a new age finance leader who combines the rigor of traditional finance with the power of digital transformation to make businesses grow faster and smarter. Third, we have got 𝐥𝐴𝐳 CFO at IGT Solutions, a globally seasoned finance leader with over 2 decades of experience across India, Japan, and the US, bringing the governance and cross border expertise that keeps complex organizations rock solid. So, this was 𝐴𝐵 And finally, Chandan Vijay, Global Chief Data Officer at ABB Energy Industries, a leader who has spent 2 decades turning data and AI into real business value at a truly global scale. So, let's get into the heart of today's conversation: people, capital, technology. Three forces and four leaders who have lived all three. I am going to go to each of you directly, and I want some real answers, no textbook ones. So, my first question will be to Rajiv. Rajiv, you have steered large enterprises through IPOs, capital markets, and high stake decisions. So, here is my first question. When an organization is trying to scale both talent and technology simultaneously, how do you decide where the capital goes first? So let me rephrase it and tell you again. How do you approach capital allocation when organizations are trying to scale both talent and technology simultaneously? Over to you.
Thank you, Shelley. And first of all, pleasure being on this platform. I mean, what really got me excited talking on this platform was that this is really to encourage women to take on roles and larger roles, right? To become leaders and also to carve the future of what India is deserving, right? So, pleasure talking to all of you. Of course, it's a pleasure also to have the other participants on this platform and to the wider, audience that may be listening. So to kind of reiterate the question that you had, Shelley, that it's how do I look at capital allocation in the companies that I have been part of, right? And maybe I'll be more specific to L&T Technology Services. See, capital, a lot of dimension that one has to start thinking around, right? And especially in today's times, when it's not easy, right? So much going on around geopolitical environment that one has to think, right? So I will really break it into four areas. One, I think capital always has to be available to make organic investments, right? When I think about organic investments, it's about investing towards technologies, innovation. It's about investing towards people, leadership, building talent even at the bottomest layer. That's what I call as organic investment. The second on allocation is inorganic, right? Which means having a pot ready for acquisitions, mergers, so that you're able to tap in. And if a capability is not within the organization, how do you look at white spaces and how do you build capabilities so that you can really influence a strategy to go and capture market share? The third is to the investors, which is essentially around how do you give returns back to investors. It could be dividend, it could be bonus shares, it could be other corporate actions. So all these three are kept in mind. I think the fourth one has become a lot more prominent maybe in the last 12 to 18 months, which is keeping some reserves on hand. In case a catastrophe were to happen, how do you conserve cash so that you're able to see as an organization and also to ensure that people in the organization are taken care of till that catastrophe or a certain event unfolds, right? And maybe before I kind of let you absorb this response, I also wanted to give a little color of what L&T Technology Services does. We're an engineering research and development company. We work with global customers. It could be auto OEMs, it could be aero companies, it could be designing plants, it could be medical equipments, we design them, it could be designing semiconductors. So we have this high propensity to do investments around innovation and technology. And people become a very important aspect of it, because if it is not for people, innovation is not going to happen. So that's really where I see it and how we as a leadership continue to think about capital allocation.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much. So that's really important perspective, Rajiv. And what strikes me is it's not just a financial decision; it's a strategic one.
Indeed.
Yes, perfect. So with this, we move on to Anshul. Anshul, you work at the intersection of finance and the digital transformation every single day. So let me ask you this. When organizations invest in capability building, like training, leadership development, workforce programs, how do you actually measure the return of that investment?
Sure. Thanks a lot, Shelley, for the question. First of all, extremely delighted to be part of this panel. And thanks a lot to the entire forum for sending this invitation to me. And thanks a lot again to the fellow panelists. I'm pretty sure it would be a delightful conversation, and it would be a good takeaway for everyone, including myself. Going back to your question, Shelley, you mentioned about a return on investment on capability building initiatives primarily. I think going with the experience, the current experience as well as the previous organizations in which I worked with, I see that there are three layers to it. In any sort of capability building that we talk about, one is the input layer, the second is the behavioral change, and the third is the outcome. Now, when I talk about the input layer, it's very straightforward. You try to train people, therefore there is a training cost involved. There is a time which is invested, but the real value starts showing up in the behavior change. You either do faster decision making or you can do better collaboration. There is more ownership. So that is the behavioral layer. And then ultimately, moving from the behavior level translates into the business outcomes. For example, you can improve your margins, you can show better, higher revenue per employee, or there can be a lower attrition. So that is the ultimate outcome which any business wanted, because of which it invested its time as well as money in training the people. Now, in our case, when we introduced some of the structural dashboards and trained people, then it wasn't just about the reporting improvement. It directly improved our utilization. It also led to an improvement in the gross margins too, because the moment you start training people to use the right tools, the moment you start building their capability, they optimally utilize the tool in a much better manner instead of what the tool is would have been lying idle, for example. So the key here, in my opinion, is that if capability building doesn't reflect in your financial metrics within a reasonable time, then probably you need to rethink your strategy. Always, whenever I think about training, I always see this as an anecdote that training is very much like going to a gym. When you go to the gym, you will not see the end result in a day or two. It will always take time, but the results or the performance will always show up. It is just that your effort is immediate, and you need to keep on doing that. That is, you need to keep on training people. You need to keep on ensuring that they have the right skill and the capability to to execute the tasks.
All right. Perfect. Thank you so much for answering this. I really loved it because, ROI on people is one of the hardest things to be put on a number. And yet it's one of the most important. So thank you so
Absolutely.
much for answering it. And now moving forward, I have one question for Chandan. Chandan, let's bring the data lens into this conversation. Organizations today are data rich, but inside poor. They have more data than ever before, and yet they still can't answer the questions that matter. So, why does that gap exist, and what actually breaks it? I would like to know this from you.
Sure. Thank you very much for inviting me on this panel, and I'm happy to be out here and sharing thoughts and learning from each of us. I think when we look at data, right, data is considered the new capital, or data is considered the new fuel that we all keep on talking about, right? What typically happens in organizations, we've got a lot of application landscape, we've got a lot of transactional systems which are working in, and they're collecting data through these transactions. Now, as we see, why are we inside poor, or why is it we are not, I would say, data rich, but inside poor, is because traditionally what happens is we have these applications, we collect data into through those as transactions, but we never harness the power of that data to give insights. And what typically happens is we have these applications, we collect data into through those transactions, but we never harness the power of that data to give insights. And what typically happens is we have these applications, we collect data into through those transactions, but we never harness the power of that data
Am I audible to
to
you?
give insights.
Yes, you are audible. I think he may have dropped.
Okay, I probably might be having some technical issues. My
All
apologies
right.
for that.
All right. Yeah,
Yeah,
you
I
are
will
back.
continue with that. So I think where we see challenges is because we treat data as a standalone entity, we typically go and get the understanding of how data, when blended together as an entity or as an end-to-end system, can give us insights. Now, we work a lot on trying to do data engineering, trying to bring data into large platforms, but we don't thread the data to make as an outcome-driven solution. We don't look at it as a data as a product, it kind of breaks that thread that it doesn't give us an insight, it just stands alone as a product. When we look at data, what we really look forward is how do we treat data as a product? How do we combine it and thread it as an end-to-end transaction or as an end-to-end process so that it can give insights? The second aspect is, uh, as I mentioned about, a lot of times we treat data as let's ingest it, let's bring it into our platform, let's make it available. And when we bring it in there and we start making reporting, what we tend to do is we make dashboards. Now, when you look at that, traditionally what that data gives is it's a rear view mirror insight. It is something which has already happened. It is already descriptive. What has happened in past. Now, what information I'm going to get from data which has happened in past, we typically focus on, okay, I'm going to look at my past quarter information. I'm going to look at what my sales were like that. But what really, really gives insight is how do I look at that data and say, start to do more predictive, prescriptive kind of analytics, give more futuristic view of data and insights to the leadership, to the users. And that is what makes that capital sit in an example, it's sitting in a bank, in a savings account, getting a very, very minimal interest rather than investing into a fund which can give you a much, much bigger portfolio. And when we look at that data, which is residing, which is just giving us dashboards, which is giving us insights, what we really look forward is how do we turn that into actionable
All right. So I
So
think
when
we
we when
again
we look
lost.
at that data, we tend to confuse data with intelligence. And I think that is the problem which lies that how do you treat data as first as not as just an entity, but convert into an end-to-end data product which threads your different processes. Second aspect is how do you look at data as an intelligent source of information, make more predictive, prescriptive analytics? And third is just don't treat data as, I would say, just a capital, which is lying in a savings bank account. How do you invest it wisely through talent, through platforms, and through, I would say, now the big buzzword, bring it in AI to give you more insight rich outcomes.
All right. Perfect. Am I audible to you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Perfect. So I think that's exactly the challenges, and it's not about having more data. It's about asking the right questions of the right of the data you already have. If I'm not wrong. Okay, I think there is some network issue from Chandan's end, but in the meanwhile, we'll move on to Ajay. So, Ajay, you have worked across India, Japan, and the US. From a CFO's lens, what makes a workforce initiative truly scalable and financially sustainable?
So thanks, first of all, right, for having me here, right? So I think great to have great colleagues here, right? See, so I'll talk specifically about, say, IGT Solutions, right? So IGT Solution is a customer experience company, right? So where majority of us, we serve all the global travel players, right? And now where their job is to provide excellent experience to their specific clients, and we become part of chain, right? Now scaling talent, right, it is like it's like lifeline of the business, not for me but for my clients as well, right? Now what happens, right, so you have a different set of business, right? So if I talk specifically about here now, right, you'll have a seasonal demand, right? Say for example, when you enter into summer season, right, so which is typically a holiday period, right? So the demand of the calls and the queries shoots up, right? So you have to scale up the talent, right? You have to scale up the workforce at a very high speed, right? However, after that, right, so suddenly the demand drops, right, and you need to again manage the talent in a manner so that one, you you can take care of your people, you can take care of client at the same time, right? Your P&L also should look healthy, right? Now, in order to do this, right, so one, you need to have agile models, right? Agile models in this sense, right, which can talk, which can predict, which can forecast what is going to happen, how it is going to happen, etc., and all. And then the most important thing is that, right, means how you can one upskill the talent and how you can rotate the talent, right? If suppose there is a slowness in a demand in a particular with a particular client or particular geography, right? Considering how you can move them fast, and you can move them fast to make them effective and meaningful for their customers. Two is that, right, means how you can ensure, right, means they have the right skill, right skill in this sense, right? So uh, say a agent, say if I talk about specifically about our business, is working say with a client A, right, in a lean period, how he or she can become meaningful to the client B, right? So just to ensure, right, two things, right? So one, how you can be agile, how you can deal with the volumes, how you can be meaningful to the client, and most important, right, how you can be fair and uh, good to your employees, right? Because you can take you can take very decisions which are very fast but may not be good for your employees, right? And then at the end of the day, right, so it impacts the reputation of you as a firm, right? Not to the employees but across the street, right? So I think these are the things which I have seen here, and these applies across the globe as well, right? So before this, right, so I was the CFO of the consulting business of Infosys, and a JV between Infosys and Hitachi based in Japan, right? The same rule applies there, right? Right, means again, means how you can a step ahead, how you can plan, right? And I think in one of the conversation Rajiv mentioned, right, means about this, how you can plan for preserve cash, right, for uncertain events, right? So that applies here also when you are managing the talent, right? Uh, just look for a situation like which happened in COVID, right? That was maybe kind of once in a kind of a century scenario. And in our business recently, whatever is happening, seeing in the Middle East, right, when the whole travel thing is getting disrupted, or the Indigo scenario which happened say a few months back, right? So those are the things, right? So where we manage our talent, etc., and all, and that applies globally.
All right, got it. Thank you so much for answering this. So basically, in this entire conversation, the one word which stood out for me is sustainability. Because any initiative that can't sustain itself financially, no matter how well initiated, that will eventually stop.
Absolutely.
All
Absolutely, absolutely.
Great. So, with this, we move on to Chandan once again. I want to come back to you and ask one more question. How do you place a financial value on an organization's data assets? That the CFO and the board treat data as seriously as any other capital investment. Let me rephrase this for you again. How do you place a financial value on an organization's data assets so the CFO and board treat them as seriously as physical capital?
I think there is pretty big CFOs and CEOs kind of sitting in this meeting, so I'm sure they would align to this part that value creation from data is a very significant aspect as we start to look at the most recent years. And I think the language that we keep on talking about is what is the risk that we are looking at if we don't invest into it? Is it like an impairment risk? Is it like a replacement risk? Is it do I need to recreate any asset? And how do I tie it back to my, let's say, revenue attribution or EBITDA? For example, one of the goals that we have for our data team is how do we contribute to our margins and EBITDA in that senses. And where we look at it is when we are building a data product, is it an across enterprise wide or is it across a different hub or a division wide or a team wide? Because the cost to recreate that object or that asset would be significant if we have to do it multiple times. Can we look at data? Can we look at data objects? Can we look at data products and see how can we create it uniformly for our enterprise across the wide? Because if I'm to create that object for 5 times, 5 different people or 5 different teams, it's a cost that I'm absorbing. It's a value which is getting divided. So that's one part where I'm trying to look at the cost of recreation going down, that how do we not do it multiple times. Then when we look at
data assets as a revenue enabler? How does it contribute to, let's say, the P? Am I able to give insights to different functions and different entities that they are able to basically either speed up their decision making, they're able to effectively serve the customers, they're effectively able to go and add more into their sales pipeline, reduce the turnaround time for either completing a project or reduce the risk. Therefore, it eventually directly targets to the bottom line and the top line in the numbers. And that is what, where, if I have to call, data becomes not just data, but it becomes an insight and it becomes a organizational enabler. The third part is, how do I reduce the risk for an enterprise? Now, today, when we are talking about AI very significantly, what we are also looking at is, how do I bring in the data and give a much more clear risk indicators to leadership? Am I looking at my supply chain and am I looking at the world scenarios? For example, the way Middle East scenario turned around, nobody could have predicted that if something like this happens, what the impact is going to be. If looking at the outside world factors and looking at the suppliers and looking at the data we have, if I'm able to predict and give different, I would say, simulation scenarios to leadership well in advance, if X happens, how does it impact Y? And that is where they are able to make a I would say, contingency plans, that if something this happens, how do I ensure that my supply chain is still continued? There is no risk to my production, there is no risk to manufacturing, I'm still able to serve the customers. Those are the kind of risk indicators. If we are able to give through the data and insights, I think that is where the leadership is enabled. That is where they're able to continue the business operations. And that is where I would say the other aspect of this part is, we also ensure that our people as an asset are also well protected. For example, when this whole scenario happened, if we understand where our people are, where our assets are, and how do you ensure that their safety is paramount, and then get them out of those scenarios, that is also something. So bringing in those multiple scenarios, I think I would say it kind of converts from just being data to basically a capital investment, and CFOs can then start to take that and to treat that not just as data, but how to make that, I would say, insightful decisions, reduce the risks, and then make an effective organization by impacting either top line or bottom line.
All right. Thank you so much for answering this. So I understand data is not just an item now, it's a business asset. And until organizations start treating it that way, the gap between data and decisions will always remain.
Certainly.
Right? Okay, great. So we move on to our next question to Mr. Rajiv Gupta. One more for you. So how do you see the relationship between the two evolving over the next few years?
And
I will
when you
one
mean
second.
by
I will
please,
rephrase the question for you. How do you see the relationship between the talent strategy and the financial performance evolving in the next few years?
I think this is a very broad question, if I were to say, but honestly, uh, the talent is going to significantly drive, and it's the center is talent, right? Because with so much of technology shift, I mean, I heard, of course, Chandan talk about data, relevance of data, AI coming in, new technology. You've got, the Gen X, the Gen Zs, and the Gen Ys, all different behavioral patterns. What's important is that, the talent of today will have to shift gears looking at different ways of working. And it's not just the responsibility of the companies to really have, people get upgraded in terms of skills, but also the individual responsibility of people who are in this professional world to think differently what this model is. Am I audible?
There's some disturbance. Rajiv,
Yeah.
try to
All
speak
right.
now.
You
I
can
think
touch it.
Am I
Yes, you
audible?
can. Yes, you are. Yeah.
Hello?
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah. So I was
Yes.
saying, yeah, I was saying that look, it's also the responsibility of professionals as individuals to understand what is going to be relevant in tomorrow's times, right? Now think of it tomorrow, much like you work. You have a colleague. The colleague is sitting probably. You're doing a Teams call or either sitting in person. Maybe 3 years down the line, you'll have an AI agent with the same color in terms of emotions, in terms of data being available with that AI agent. And you will have to adapt to working with someone who's an AI agent, right? But with emotions. So there's a lot of, that central aspect, which is talent, which will drive, right? To me, financial performance is actually an outcome. I will not peg the two together. Financial performance is only an outcome, right? What's important is talent, which will lead to innovation, new ways of working, and also somewhere, how the strategy will work to make sure that they're able to leverage the talent and the innovation quotient to see the benefit. I also feel much like you go back to the times when I think the late 90s and the early 2000s when the internet companies came into being and they really rode the wave, right? I mean, you've seen a lot of hyperscalers coming post 2000. I think the AI age companies and the companies that are able to adopt AI and somewhere converge their talent to accept are going to make a huge, let's say, leap in terms of what will come into the future. So that's my, again, 2 cents around it. Talent really becomes a central aspect of it, and financial performance is more of an outcome.
Got it. Thank you so much. So I think that's the shift we all are living through right now. And talent is no longer just an HR conversation, it's a board conversation now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So one final question to you, Anshul. Um, what role does financial planning play in helping organizations build teams that are truly agile and future ready?
Sure. Thanks a lot, Shelly, for the question. So, I think before I delve into it, since you mentioned agility along with financial planning, uh, I joined Akkodis, my current organization, about 3.5 years back, and Akkodis is primarily an IT engineering services company. And while globally it's a very large organization, but when we started our operations in India, we started grounds up. So we've been doubling down almost every year. And the reason why I'm highlighting or giving you this background is because when an organization doubles down every year, so typical, I mean, very, if I compare it to any other traditional IT player, you will see probably a growth of 10%, 15%. Over here, we were seeing a growth of almost like 100% on a year-on-year basis. Because obviously we were new and we wanted to scale up. We were setting up our GDC. We were also trying to tap some of the local players in India. Now, at that point of time, we did not had any financial tool per se. I mean, Excel, there was one Excel, and then we had a Tally. Then from Tally, we moved on to Zoho. From Zoho, we moved on to MSD, Microsoft Dynamics. And the reason why I'm mentioning that we moved on from one tool to another is to be more agile. And why I'm saying is to be more agile because there are certain limitations which comes with some of the traditional tools like Tally. I mean, you can't probably do a financial planning over there. Probably you can do an accounting. But for you to do a better financial planning, which can give you a rolling forecast, for example, which can give you decision making on the tip. So today, when we talk about numbers in IT or in the engineering space, maybe Rajiv can concur with me. The things are changing at such a great pace. One, customer demand is changing. Two, the type of work which the customers had earlier versus the type of work that they need now is totally changing. There are no more those traditional tasks for which the customers want to partner with you. Therefore, you need to ensure that you build your tools, you build your financial dashboards in such a way so that decision making can be quicker. One of the things which we implemented maybe 1.5 years back was a rolling forecast. We started doing it on a monthly basis where we said, okay, while we have a budget exercise done yearly once, but it is important that on a weekly basis we know how the churn is happening, how many people are becoming billable, how many people are going into non-billable roles, how can we tap those resources better. So when we talk about financial planning always has an end role, and that end role is to drive better decision making. That this better decision making can always result in better KPIs, be it financial KPIs or the non-financial KPIs, but it is always going to have some impact on your KPIs. So while you start with the financial planning, but the financial planning itself has multiple connotations attached to it. Now, for example, when we implemented the rolling forecast, it helped us to much better respond to market demand. It also helped to ensure that the resources are better utilized, that the resources are better allocated to the the right project. And if people are coming on bench, you already know what are the type of skill set those people belong to, and therefore what is the type of training to provide to those resources. So one dashboard or one planning exercise itself lead to multiple end benefits which you wanted to drive. So I think any planning exercise is very much like when you're driving, you don't just look at the rear view mirror, because otherwise you'll miss what is what is the road on which you're traveling. So you need to keep an eye on what are the new technologies which are coming in, how you can better adapt, so you can better your financial modeling too.
Okay. All right. Got it. Thank you so much for answering this. So that means agility, plan for, funded for, and built for. That's a completely different mindset from where most organizations are today.
Yeah.
All right. Great. So we have one question coming from one of the audience, that is Dr. Deshpande, on AI investment. Any one of you can take this question. So he's answering. Usually AI systems are capital intensive. Any strategy or tips on AI investment so that it becomes OPEX model and not CAPEX?
So let me try to answer that.
Sure.
See, I think I don't agree with this statement, right? Because you don't have to invest any capex, right? So there is every other guy is trying to do AI, right? The only thing is that you have to pick what solution you want, what is the use case, and how it is going to help, right? So the excellent example is Claude, right? Uh, so they have models starting with $30 per person per month, right? And they are so great, right? Means, like, if I talk specifically about how we are using, say, that in the finance functions per se, right? They're pretty dirt cheap, right? Now you have to just find a right partner who can help you, and they do investment for you. You have to, and most of them, they are OPEX models, right?
In fact, I agree
Okay.
with what Ajay said. I really don't agree that the AI investment is per se for the organizations who are implementing is a capex. It is more of an opex rather for them, because most of the subscriptions are now on cloud. Therefore, you rather pay on a monthly basis instead of investing something on prem and then depreciating it over the lifetime. I think I mean, in addition to what Ajay said, it is important to identify what is the problem statement that you're trying to solve. A lot of times, when I meet some of my peers, colleagues, and I hear some of the CEOs talking about, they say that they want to implement this, but then what is the problem that you are trying to address? Is this the right solution for you? We should, AI is more like a frenzy, right? And everyone thinks that if I don't get into this boat, I'll probably miss the ride. I think it's important to identify that is the solution that your peer or your ex company is implementing, is that the right solution for you too? So that I think is important. Other than that, I don't think from a OPEX or CAPEX, it is mostly going to be an OPEX solution.
Okay. Thank you so much for answering this. Anyone else? I think Dr. Deshpande would have got his answer now. And we have got one more question coming in. That is, with AI reshaping, how are you deciding what to automate versus what to invest in human capability? So, any one of you.
See, I think both are separate questions, right? So, what to automate, right? So, let me put this way, right? What not to automate, right? So, let's try to automate whatever we can, right? and then invest away in a human capability. In fact, right? So when you automate, indirectly you are investing in the human capability, because you are kind of making your people available to do some work which they are not supposed to do, right? Which machines can do, right? And they can do maybe more qualitative work. They can do more kind of R&D, research, inventions, whatever, right? And just to add one more point, right, on I think what Dr. Deshpande has asked, right? Now there are a lot of partners who work with you on an outcome-based model, right? They come with a solution that, hey, I am going to implement this particular technology and this is going to save you this much, right? And you share something to me out of that, right? So I'll say, right, you don't actually have to incur either OPEX or CAPEX. You have to just, they'll give you a savings and you have to share a part of saving out of that.
Yeah. Thank you
Maybe
so
I'll
much.
just,
Yes.
if I can share thoughts, Shelly, right? Because see, there are 3 or 4 things any company has to keep in mind, right? One is when you're looking at an AI strategy, you are probably trying to scan across the organization what can really and where can AI really help, right? And there are ways to go about it. The second is if you're really looking at areas that AI can help, that part of work can move, and maybe people doing that work can shift towards doing more quality and value add work, right? The third is I feel the most powerful becomes a human and AI combination. So if humans, I mean, as individuals and as professionals get more and more exposure, to be fair, today just to take AI and apply in the organization is not that simple, right? It requires a lot of integration. It requires a lot of testing, learning. A lot of that is a important factor here. So before you really come to a point where you can say that you continue to rely entirely on AI, that human AI combination becomes very important here. So every individual will have to get a lot more exposure into AI, a lot more openness into AI to use it in his or her work. And if you're able to use AI for that repetitive, that mundane part of it, you suddenly elevate to do a lot more qualitative aspect. To me, also it becomes an opportunity where humans will play a lot more of that leapfrogging coming into the future.
Yeah. I think we are facing some network issues from and Rajiv.
Like I compared, internet companies some decades ago. This is also an equal suddenly what
Okay. So till the time the problem resolves, I think we'll go to the next question. So this is coming from our founder, Mr. Tushar Kulkarni. If capital is abundant, technology is accessible, and talent is available, what does the CFO uniquely control that truly determines the growth? Is the question for all of you.
Okay, so I think that is a good position to be in, which generally you'll not find. So you'll have some problem, right? So, so what I think CFOs can more focus on strategy these days, right? So like, I spend a good amount of my time meeting with clients, right? Hosting clients and doing conversation, etc. Right? Working with investors, right? So what are the priorities investors have, and how we can help to achieve them, right? Irrespective of the fact, right? Means if you have these kind of pros with you, right? So you have to invest a lot of time, like a lot of your time in the things which I mentioned, right? But in case if you have a lot of capital, technology, talent, right? I mean, one of my favorite thing is like to keep assessing the assets available in the market on the M&A side, right? So I think there's a lot of stuff we can do apart from whatever I mentioned here.
And maybe just to chime in, just
So
to
I'm
add my
just
thoughts.
visualizing, right? Sorry, Anshul, I'm just visualizing, right?
Yeah.
If all this is there, right, means how relaxed we will be.
And just to add my thoughts too, see, I think maybe even if I take a utopian world and all these three things are readily available and abundant, still the organization may still face an issue if all these three things are not channelized properly. That is, there it's not an assimilation, because all these three things need to get connected. And who's going to connect? It is going to be the people whom you have invested using the capital. And whether the people are using the right technology, even if the technology is accessible, but whether they are able to use that technology in the best manner so that they can give the ROI on the capital which was abundant. Because the capital is going to deplete over a period of time if you don't invest that capital on one right people, and then the right people finding the right technology. And even if you find the right technology, if the right people are not going to use that right technology in the right manner, then ultimately you will go to ground zero where the abundant capital has just depleted over a period of time. So I think that's where the CFO role comes into the picture, where he'll try to assimilate all these three things and try to see that yes, all these three things are working in tandem. And that's probably one of the point which even Ajay was trying to mention about strategy, because it's part of the strategy, that how do you channelize those things which are readily available with you.
So, Shelly, if I may, right, and I keep this on
Yes,
a
Kelly.
lighter note. I mean, if all this is available, maybe CFOs will spend more time on the beach.
Yeah, right.
But having said that, and I agree with the other fellow panelists that look, this actually becomes a great opportunity for CFO to become multi-hatted, where they become advocates, right? They talk to customers, they actually showcase what is there in the company, and they actually drive growth as opposed to always problem solving.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Rajiv, Anshul, for giving your thoughts. So I think we have one more question coming in. It's from 𝐬𝐲 𝐂-𝐮𝐢. The question is, where does the CDO role sit in the growth conversation? Is it still seen as a support function, or has that shifted?
Okay, so as
CD.
I think as a CDO, I think I probably should answer that.
Sure.
But where I see is, I think the role has shifted a lot in the last, I would say, 5 to 6 years. Earlier, data, IT, they were all like the supporting functions. Today, both IT and data are kind of sitting at, I would say, close to board to understand what the board's priorities are, what are the investments that they're looking at in, what is the future state of the organization that they're looking at it, and how do they bring in the right level of insights to support the organization to be in that direction, and to also be able to give that velocity and acceleration that the organization needs. Typically, IT and data were considered as support functions. You will give us a strategy, and we'll tell you. Tomorrow, I think the world is changing differently. For example, when I have my conversations with my CFO and my CEOs, it is about what we can do in future for business. Rather than talking in terms of what are you needing, we are telling what data can give them now. Because we have the information available, we have the insights available. When we are looking at talking about predictive prescriptive analytics, digital twins, I think that is what is accelerating the business significantly. And they're giving new avenues to leaders to take business in a direction that was not thought, I would say, 3 years, 4 years, 10 years behind. So today, data is as close to as a president or a CFO as a board member today. And we are supporting them, we are guiding them where the business can lead into, where the conversations can go with customers, and what we can support the customers where they have not even thought about. It's about being or promoting what is the art of possibility now, rather than, okay, what was there earlier.
Thank you so much, Saket. I think you got your answer now. And now, before we wrap up, one final question to all of you from my side. If you could give one piece of advice to any organization trying to align people, capital, and technology to unlock real growth, what would that one thing be? You can give me answer one by one, and we can start with Rajiv.
So I hope I'm audible, Shelly, right? Because at some point I
Yeah.
think the network
Yes.
is blipping.
Yeah, at some point there was a network issue, but right now it's completely audible.
All right, yeah. So one, input I would share for the audience listening in is, and I often use this, four quadrant there. What is urgent? What is immediate? What is to be thought about in the interim, and what is important for the future. One advice that I offer is that always think what is required in the interim and in the future, right? And somewhere in mind that you're not working and we are a listed company, right? So we often think more quarter performance.
I think again we have some network issue. Sorry, Rajiv, we can't hear you properly. So probably we'll get back to you and
Hello.
we can. Yeah, yes, you are audible now. Can you please try again? No, I think there's some network issue. So we'll move on to Anshul as of now.
Sure, Shelly. So
Yeah,
I
thank
think,
you.
in my opinion, if I have to leave a thought on people, technology, as well as the capital, then I believe it would be just one word, which is alignment. Because even no matter, even if you have the best of people, best of technology, or the most capital individually, it it will not make any sense until unless you align all the three pieces together. And therefore, as CFOs, when I look at an organization, or I look when we look at prospective organizations, even from an M&A perspective, we always see whether the organization, how quickly or how easily is the organization aligning all these three things together. Because the capital is very much available from reading the balance sheet. You will get to know about the best technology by speaking to their IT partners. And as far as the best people are concerned, you will get to know, when you get the individual profile. But all these three pieces together can only work, and they can only deliver the right result if they are all aligned together. And then only you can probably grow faster, grow quicker. So as leaders, or as CFOs, I think our role would be to manage these elements, not just to manage these elements, but to continuously connect them in a way that drives the real outcomes. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Anshul. We'll move on to Chandan.
I think as Anshul said, right? It's if you look at people, technology, and capital, and if you treat them as a triangle, I think you have to maintain that as a triangle which is in shape. If we throw in too much people, if we throw in too much technology, but the capital for projects or initiatives is not there, it would again be askew. Similarly, if we are throwing too much capital, but the people are not talented, the talent is not there, the technology is not being made available for them to use, all of that capital will not be giving the insights. And I think that is where the intersection of all three has to be balanced out so that it is kind of expanding rather than skewing in one direction. So your triangle continues to expand, those sides continues to expand in a more harmonized way. That is where an organization would grow because all the three are aligned. The strategy is aligned, the people are aligned to that strategy, the technology is being brought in, the right capital investments are being brought in. If if we don't make that align together, I think that is where the skew will happen, and those investments or those trainings will not give those desired outcomes and results.
Got it. Thank you so much, Chandan. And with this, we move on to Ajay.
Yeah. So I think growth is unlocked, right? So when people, technology, and capital, they come all together, right? And they are tied with common objective, common outcome, right? So I think the fellow panelists mentioned, right, alignment, right? So if all of them are talking a different language and with a silos objective or objectives in silos, right? So I think it's a a classic recipe for failure, right? Classic example you can take, right? So Reliance Jio, right? So what they have done, right? So they invested in technology, they created a talent pool, and rest is history, right? So they are, I think, I don't know, they are the top two telecom players in India, right? And maybe the way they are growing soon, they'll be globally one of the largest telecom player, right? So you need to invest in people, in technology, but always consider, right, means what are the objectives of the organization, what are the objective of the investors, and maybe you can keep redoing, right, after a certain point of time, right, whether we're in the right path, yes, no, or how it is going, right? So I think that would help definitely.
Thank you so much, Ajay. So it was very powerful. Thank you so much. Thank you very, very much. So, people, capital, technology, four leaders, four perspectives, one clear message. When these three forces align, growth is not just possible, it is inevitable. And on that note, I think we have our answer. People, capital, technology. We came in today asking how these three forces come together. And we have heard from our four extraordinary leaders is that they don't just come together, they depend on each other. You cannot deploy capital intelligently without understanding your people. You cannot leverage technology efficiently without the right people to lead it. And you cannot build the right teams without the capital and the data to back every decision. That is the triangle of real growth. And today we saw it come alive in this conversation. I want to take a moment to sincerely thank all the panelists, Rajiv, Anshul, Ajay, and Chandan. Thank you for not just showing up, but for showing up with honesty, depth, and generosity. You guys just didn't give us theory today, you gave us real experience, and that is priceless. We will be back with more conversations that matter, more leaders who inspire, and more conversation questions worth asking. Until then, keep investing in your people, keep making data-driven decisions, and keep building organizations worth working for. Thank you, and goodbye for now. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Shari.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
So I request